Thanks again for coming. We appreciate it. As you see, we have a stripped down set here that was for multiple reasons. But I feel like that tonight especially, it just sets a cool atmosphere because, again, what we're trying to build here is community. So the fact that we changed the seating up a little bit, we brought it in, and it happened to be, it correlated perfect with the fear of weather. So we knew that was going to deter people, so we just wanted to create, again, just the atmosphere of just a group of people going through life together. And that is truly what we want to create. I had he's a pastor friend of my dad. We've known him a long time, an older guy. He's been a sort of a mentor for me just growing up, and he called me today, just asked how everything was going, asked how the family was. Everyone wants to talk about the adoption, and I say the same thing. We don't know. You just kind of sit and wait. So we're talking about that. Then he asked about local church, asked how everything was going, and then he said something. He said, "Well, what was your heart for it?" And I just explained. It was just a place that people could meet, could come. It was inviting, welcoming, not judgmental in any way, shape, or form. Just a place that people could come and truly experience Jesus, where they didn't feel judged or condemned, and that you just had people next to you you're going through life with. And then he asked me, he just flat out asked, he goes, "Well, have you accomplished that yet?" And honestly, it was a little bit of a pride hit for me because I don't think we have, and I don't think we ever will. But he said at some point you have to get out of your own way and just let it grow. So I'm very encouraged and excited for the community that we're building here with the local church. And we got some big plans moving forward in the future. So man, get hooked up, be involved. Guys, I know we do a book study. Right now, it's the first Monday night of every month. If you didn't come to the first one, you really missed out, to be honest. I thought it was just going to be a meet and greet, and we dove right in just to life. No agenda with the book yet because we were just going to talk about it. But, I mean, we dealt with things that I love hearing other people's opinions, and I love hearing just people being able to encourage one another, but also create an environment that people can just talk. And man, here's what I'm going through. Here's something I see. Here's what I would like to do, whatever that may be, and it's just an avenue for that. So, guys, if you did not come, I encourage you. It would be the first Monday night in March. And we're going to start adding a few throughout the month in case you cannot make that. And but we'll still be talking about those same chapters. But this next one, we're going to be talking about the first 7 chapters of On the Moment by Carl Lentz. So make sure that you're a part of that. Because, again, it's just a great time. We'll do it somewhere downtown here. And as a 33-year-old, it makes me feel trendy to come down here at night and just hang out. So it's make sure that you're getting with that, and if you need any information on that, Harold King. So let's give it up for Harold, my man Harry. He spoke for me last week, and it was kind of a deal that him and Caitlin have been such a vital part. Caitlin has been a friend of the family. We've done holidays together since we were kids. And me and Harold met in a very interesting way. And we've journeyed through life, and he has been awesome through this. I don't know how we would have been able to launch and then run the local church without the Kings. And he was able to speak, and he just has such a cool story and a different perspective on coming in. and he has a different intensity about him than anybody else I've ever met. If you haven't talked to Harold, had any conversation with him about anything, please do so you can feel the intensity that he carries. And for me, it's something I can get right in step with. So thank you, Harold. I do appreciate that. It was a very good message, too. I know you thought that we didn't record it, but we did. And you did good. Okay, tonight, it's part 3 of When Kingdoms Collide. And essentially, we're just going through the book of Daniel and how he experiences life, how he goes through life, deals with social norms, changes in culture, but still is able to stay true to who he is, and then how he does it out of a place of where he can still have a voice in people's life and still honor God through that, to where it's not an us versus them because you don't agree with me, but yet it is, I don't agree with you, but it's still out of a place of love. So we're going to be talking out of Daniel 3, which this here is it's a story of faith, of courage, and of conviction. And it's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the courage to stand in the face of death, the courage to stand and hold true to who they were while culture was going one way. And it was the opposite of the way they were, so how they were able to stand in that, but yet how to stand in that place while standing in love. So we've been talking about pressure and culture and living out your values, but while also loving well. And Daniel was, as we have seen in chapters 1 and 2, is tested and tested again and tested again, but yet he goes through his journey with integrity that lives out in his convictions. We talked again a couple weeks ago about how we hear convictions and we think of guilty or not guilty, whether someone did something or not, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that thing inside of you that when you're brought to a question, whether one is right or wrong, that you know what that is. Those are the convictions that we're talking about. So, Daniel was amazing. The last time we talked, he interpreted King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, saved his people, and then was able to still honor God through that. So then he prophesies, and this is at the end of Daniel 2, this is verse 44 and 45, that during the reigns of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed or conquered. It will crush all these kingdoms into nothingness, and it will stand forever. This is the meaning of the rock cut out of the mountain, though not by human hands, that crushed to pieces the statue of iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold. The great God was showing the king what will happen in the future. The dream is true, and its meaning is certain. And by him saying this, he wins the heart of King Nebuchadnezzar in that moment. So then we move on to number 3. I have 3 points tonight, and this is just living out life in the fire, or living out those tests in the fire. Number 1 is you have to be tested by fire. You will be tested by fire. So Daniel chapter 3 took place much further along than just reading through from chapter 2. The thought is that it was at least 20 years after chapter 2. So some time had passed. In chapter 3, but then also chapter 6, cover 2 of the most famous stories in the Bible. The fiery furnace in chapter 3, and then Daniel in the lion's den in chapter 6. We often skip over these stories because they're so dramatic. when you read them, it's dramatic. We look at life now, and I don't know about you guys or the way that you live life, but I personally have never been confronted with doing something or being thrown into a fiery furnace. I don't know if anybody else has. If you have, I would love to hear that story because I enjoy stories. So that seems like it would be very intriguing. No one has ever said for me to do something or I would be thrown into a pit with a bunch of lions. Hasn't happened. I've only seen lions in one place in my life, and that is in the zoo, behind what I would assume and hope is very, very thick, unbreakable glass. So I've never been confronted by those. So I feel like sometimes we pass through those things because they're so dramatic, because we're not going to face those in our everyday walk. But the principle of these stories are so vital. The principles that they tell us that we're able to get out of these stories are so vital. You don't end up with a confrontation like this, like going into the fiery furnace or going into the lion's den, if you're not living out your convictions. If you're just going with the flow of whatever society or mainstream media says that is right, then you're never going to have to live out, or you're never going to have to confront these situations if you don't live out your convictions with courage. These kind of tests check one thing. When I read through them, it tests one thing. I think most people would say courage. It tests your courage. I would disagree with you. I think that your answer might also be right, but for the sake of this message and this point, you're wrong. I truly believe that the one thing that these stories, what I get out of this, the main thing is it tests your fear. Because I think that we would like to think we're all high and mighty and that we make decisions based upon courage and how much courage we have. But in all reality, it's based out of fear. It's very natural for people to base things out of fear. So in these situations, what I get is the vital part is it's testing your fear. What do you fear most? People or God? That's what I get out of these. When I read through Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I think, do I fear what the king could do to me more? Or not having a fear of God? Not having a fear of the conviction? Because when we hear fear of God, I think that fear is not bad. That's actually a very, very good fear. And living out that conviction with that fear of God, how many times do we make decisions that we end up regretting, and you get in your own head and you think about it for hours and hours and hours after when everybody else has already forgotten about it, because you realize that you made a decision based upon what somebody else would find out about you or about how you truly thought or how you truly felt. But you didn't base that decision based on your fear of God, who already knows everything about you, but then still loves you. We make decisions because, well, we want to be with this group, or we want to have these friends, or we want to be in this place, or have certain people think things about us. When it comes down to it, it really doesn't matter. I mean, looking back now, I know we have some high school kids in here, but looking back now, I would make decisions when I was in high school because I cared about what other people thought, when now, let's see, I'm 15 years out of high school, I literally talked to like 2 of them. We graduated with like 1,000 kids, and I talked to 2 of them. Why I look back now, I'm like, I was so stupid. Like, why would I make decisions? But why do we continue to make that same mistake today? Why do we care what our coworker thinks about us? In all reality, in a year, you might not ever talk to them again. One of you guys gets fired, you may never talk to them again. But yet you're making decisions in life based upon what people think instead of what our Heavenly Father thinks about you, but He already knows everything and yet still loves you. But we're trying to win the love of other people based on our decisions, whether it go with our convictions or not. We're always afraid of what people think, but in all reality, what we should be afraid of, honestly, what I'm afraid of, is waking up one day and realizing that I'm outside of God's will for my life, that I'm outside of God's grace. So for me, it's I can take going through life, making decisions, getting hit in the mouth, getting knocked over, getting back up, getting knocked down, getting back up, just going through and going home and thinking, man, was that worth it? To me, it is if I can lay my head on my pillow at night and know that I am living in God's will for my life, that I am leading my family how I'm supposed to be leading them, how I'm stewarding this church like I know I'm supposed to, that we're taking the steps forward, that we're helping people, that we're moving forward in life. That's the type of decision process that I want to go through in life. That's what I want for me to be concerned about is, am I in God's will? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Where I'm supposed to be doing it? The rest of the stuff falls into line. Fear of being outside of God's will more than you fear what others find out about you should be the thought process. When your life is over, what do you want the story of your life to be? I mean, especially now that we have kids and we're building a family, it's interesting because when we got married, like I was all about me for the whole thing. Like it was all about what I was going to do and how I set myself up and whatever in life. I got married, to be honest, it kind of stayed the same way. It was there. But the moment that Charleston came out, it absolutely changed everything. Because now my decisions affect my legacy. And the day we realize that is the day we start making decisions where we are out of our own heads, that we're not worried about what other people. Honestly, I couldn't care less what anybody thought about me as long as I'm setting my family up for the future. As long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I couldn't care less. If I go home and my son runs in and he sees me, yells, "Dad, Dad," and he's about this high and runs nonstop, that's kind of like the mode that he's in. And he's got a sheer head, so it's not good. You got to keep your eyes on a swivel. Gentlemen, when you come over to my house, keep your eyes on a swivel because my man runs and runs nonstop, and he leads with his head. That's all I'm going to say. But as long as I am setting him up, I don't care what you guys, in all reality, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That's how we need to live our lives. Quit worrying about what other people think. Do what you're supposed to be doing. Your promotion comes from God, not from other people. So quit doing things and saying things that you think your boss is going to like or that your boss lines up with, hoping for that promotion. That's not where that comes from. Promotion comes from above. Fear of God is built alone with God in prayer and worship. That fear of God is built alone with God in prayer and worship. In Daniel 2, we see Daniel and his friends alone with God in prayer and worship. And then in chapter 3, we see them living it out. So just a little base for this, Nebuchadnezzar planned to unify the kingdom by bringing in religion and fear and building this idol, and that's what they were going to worship. It was more than just a political assembly. It was a worship service. It had music. It called for total commitments with everyone in attendance. I'll tell you what's interesting. I started counting in this because I kept reading it over and over and over again. But this was all about Nebuchadnezzar bringing everybody in and getting them essentially in step with what he wanted. He didn't care what you believed, just get in step with him. He uses the word worship 11 times in chapter 3. So the power of worship is real. So there were a lot of people, both from Babylon, but then also the slaves that they had brought and the refugees, and they all came in and worshiped this idol just because the king told them to, and that's what everybody else was doing. They literally just got in step with everybody else. There were thousands of Jews in Babylon, and these three guys were the only guys. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were the only ones that went against the current. These were the ones that led. But that is the nature of leadership. If you'd say, man, I want to know what is the nature of leadership, it's courage and conviction. If you have those two things, it's pretty easy. Because you have courage to live out your convictions. So let's read Daniel 3, and we're going to read 1 through 7. This is out of the New Living Translation. If you have an actual Bible, I appreciate you. If you don't, Google it. Okay, verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar made a golden statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messages to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all of the providential officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. So all these officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then heralds shouted, "People of all races and nations and language, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, or other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." So at the sound of the musical instruments, all of the people, whatever their race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But yet, 3 of them had the courage to say no. Sometimes life is going to go and things are going to happen, especially in this day and age, because information is so readily available that so many people think they're experts, and so many people that you went to high school with feel like they have an opinion and they're an expert in that opinion. And it becomes this place where we live in a society where you cannot not only not be friends with someone that you don't agree with, but you have to hate them because you guys don't agree. That doesn't make sense to me. There are a few things in this society that do not make sense. That, and there's no more oops. That's one thing that bothers me. Like, you're not allowed to make a mistake anymore. It all of a sudden defines you for your life. But that's a whole nother thing. Let's stick on this one. I was about to go on a rant there, but you should be able to make a mistake without the fear of your boss calling you in because you made that mistake. Anyways, let's go back to this. So we live in a society where you're not allowed to oppose somebody and not hate them. I don't have to agree with everything that my friends think on everything. To me, that is the place of, if you would say, you know what, how do you, in 2019, how do you live out your convictions but still act in love? Here's how easy it is now. Just listen to them. Like, listening is not, like, we want to make arguments against someone that we don't even listen to their argument. So we have no idea what we're arguing at this point, just everybody's talking. But if we just listen and you realize that people have gone through things and experienced things that have built the way that they think, whether it's right or wrong, you still love them. You still give them the time of day to listen. That doesn't mean you got to agree with them. But just shutting people off, that becomes a very, very lonely world. Where instead, you listen, you love them, and maybe show them by example rather than just being the loudest one to yell. Daniel 3, 12 through 15. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the golden statue that you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. Okay, he flew into a rage. I got a funny story for that. So my wife, very, very loving, nice, sweet, kind human being. When she gets pregnant, there's been a few times I'm like, what has happened to my wife? Can you bring her back, please? Whatever this ball of hormones is, she'll literally, there was one time, and she's downstairs with our kids just serving the Lord, which I appreciate, so I can talk about it because she's not here. But she once went into this rage, flew into a rage, and she went through everything for, I was a terrible husband, a terrible father, a terrible friend. I was sloppy. I had made a mess everywhere I went. I mean, this whole thing. She literally walked into our bathroom. About 30 seconds later, she walked out like this. And I was like, come here. She's like, I'm sorry. No, you're a great husband. I'm like, no, you already said it. Don't try to go back. I get it. The truth came out. But it's funny because she said, she goes, I'm sorry. I had this deal like I could only see red. She goes, I've never experienced that before. She goes, I could only see red. And I couldn't not say it. She goes, I mean, have you ever experienced that? I'm like, a temper? Yeah. I just have done enough stupid things in that temper that I've learned to just shut my mouth and smile. And but it was funny because she was so honest. She's like, I've never experienced. All I could see was red. And I was like, yeah, it's about once a day. But I've learned to just step away and breathe a little bit, and then I'm good. So back. I understand when he flew into a rage what happened. So he flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is this true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the golden statue I've set up? And I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue that I have made when you hear the sound of musical instruments. But if you refuse, you'll be thrown immediately into the burning furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? That, to me, in the story is when it changed. It was, yes, they had the courage to stand up, but they made it about their God. He made it about their God in this moment. So that is living life in the fire. They are faced with that. Number 2 is, what do you worship? What do you worship? In verse 15, remember it said, fall down and worship the image that I made. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our heart, but it will come out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for we are worshiping what we are becoming. That, to me, that little, just one little quote there, that which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. So what are you worshiping? Singing, shouting, praying are all responses to what is going on in your heart. So I'll pose a few questions. What matters the most to you? What matters the most? And who is first in your life? Not just you know the right answer to say, I am third, I am second, whatever it is. I am not first. We all know the things that the right things to say, but I want you just to take inventory of your life and what is first in your life. What do you actually worship? If you can answer that honestly, you will know what you worship. If that answer is not God and God is not first, the Bible calls that idolatry. And that is what was happening here in Babylon. It's worshiping something other than God. When people push us to worship things other than God, it doesn't have to be an us versus them moment either. That then is walking out those convictions in love. I have friends that are other religions or no religions at all, but that doesn't mean it's us versus them. That's not how I view it. I view it that I'm going to be the example to them that makes them want to look. Because right now, I mean, honestly, if you looked at it, I don't know if you were coming in and say you wiped your whole memory clean, everything clean, you started fresh, looking at everything based on what I see now, I don't know if I would choose Christianity based off even how people act. Because if you're talking about dedication, there are more dedicated. It's all of these things. So for me, it's I can control what I can control. So I'm going to control me and mine. And we will be that example of how to walk in love but still live out our convictions. I challenge you to do the same. So when others push you to worship things other than God, it doesn't have to be an us versus them. And Jesus never let it go there. And Daniel doesn't let it go there in chapter 6 in the lion's den either. He just does what he does. And when faced with opposition, he worships God. In this, the king uses music, images, and sound, a band to draw people in, just showing once again the powerful influence that music has on all of us. I mean, we all know that Lucifer was a musician. That's one of his tools. We all love music. Again, I'm not speaking bad about any of it. I'm just saying be careful what you're singing. Be careful what you're listening to, that it doesn't end up being your worship. We all love music, so did they, and Nebuchadnezzar knew that. But these three knew who they were and what they believed, what they embraced, and what they would endure for it. They knew what they believed, they knew what they were opposed with, they knew what would happen, but yet still stood firm. Follow your trail of affection and you'll know what you worship. What do you spend most of your time doing? What do you spend most of your money on? What do you spend most of your attention focused on? And you'll find out what you worship. Number 3, living out your faith. Living out your faith always takes risks. Always. Living out your faith, you will find opposition frequently, and it always takes faith to live it out. That's the only way the kingdom of God is built, is on faith. So we're going to go down to Daniel 3, 15 through 18. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. That is it's this whole response, as we go through it, I want you just to look at it sentence by sentence, because to me it It embodies how I want to respond to things, how I want to respond to opposition. Why do we feel like when someone opposes us, we have to defend ourselves? When he immediately responds, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into a blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty, still in a place of honor towards the king." Verse 18. "But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that if we will never serve your gods and worship the golden, we'll make it clear, but even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you that we will never serve your gods or worship the golden statue that you have set up." Talk about being in a place of courage. Just like Jonathan and his armor bearer, it just might be that God will work for us. We're not going to give in, we're not going to do it. Our God will save us, but even if he doesn't, we're not going to. That is in a place that is a point of no return. You're making a stand, and you're not able to waver from there. That is the type of person that I want to be going through life. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you oppose me with. I don't care what you threaten. I'm going to stand here and stand. Here's the reality as Kat comes up. We look at the persecution of Christians in the Bible, but when it comes down to it, it's not the physical persecution anymore, especially in America. It's literally social. It's what people think about us. We're concerned that we're going to get marked as something because of it, or people aren't going to invite us to things because of that, it really is. It's like, wait, so someone's not going to invite you to something because of a stand you took? In all reality, you probably shouldn't be there anyways if that's the stand you took. So trust me, God is in control. God is in your corner. Just take that stand. This is the place that I want to be in, encouraged to stand in the face of death and know that God is going to deliver you, but even if he doesn't, you're not giving in. At the end of the day, this is all about the courage and convictions and how the three of these men stood in the face of death, held their convictions in a place of courage. What if you're standing in a place where it's not physical death, but it's your image is at risk? Are you really willing to do that? It might seem hard, I understand, but when it comes down to it, it all works out. God has an unbelievable plan for your life. It's bigger than you could imagine. What if all it takes is you taking a stand? What if someone's life and then family and then generations so far down has changed because you took a stand and they saw it? They've been waiting for someone to do that. What if? It might seem dramatic, but that is the reality that we live in. People are looking at us. Especially with this, we've said we want this to be a place that you can just come and there's no expectation for you, nothing. We just want you to come and just experience Jesus, the real Jesus. We're sorry if you've been hurt. I want to apologize for every pastor that's been in Tulsa that if you've been hurt by church, I'm sorry. I really am. Can I just confront the harsh reality? It's probably just assumed that you've assumed that offense. That pastor didn't mean to be offensive towards you. But there's hurt that's involved with that. I want to apologize for them, and I want to let you know this is a place that I want you, literally, you could come here. All I care about I don't care for you to get from point A to point B, from whatever number you are to a 10. I don't care how long it takes you. All I care is that you're taking one step forward. That's it. Just keep moving forward, because you're not standing still in life. You're either moving forward or moving back. So I want to be a place that people are just moving forward. If that's getting past an addiction, let's get past it. If it's getting past a hurt of the past, let's get past it. If it's unforgiveness that you're holding against somebody, forgive them. Move on. Take that next step. Again, we're not asking you to be at the pinnacle right away. Just take a step forward. Whatever is in the past, take one step away. You're that much further away from it. Let your past be the past. So I'm a binge watcher on TV shows, to be honest with you guys. If it's a really good show, I will one more show it till like 4 a.m. Anybody that, they get you with that next episode at the bottom, you know what I mean? It's like, there's no commercials. It's only 44 minutes. I'll click it. Oh my gosh, it's 4 a.m. and my kids are waking up in 3 hours. One more. We're good. I got to see what happens. But no, I just finished Vikings. That was, great time of the earth. I would say it's my favorite time. Like, where men were allowed to be men. But there's still an honor. But there were no rules. So cool. Anyways, but King Ragnar, who's the man, beautiful blue eyes. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. If a guy's a good set of eyes, there's a good chance I'm watching the show. They amaze me. Why? Because I have very basic, average brown. That's why. So don't judge me. But he's taking his sons on their first voyage, and that is a step into manhood. And he said something. It was like in the middle seasons. So what if it took me like a week and a half to finish the 6 seasons? But it was in one of the middle seasons. But they're getting ready to set sail, and they leave, and everyone waves. They get on the ships, and they go off, and they start sailing, and none of the men look back. Once they get in and they set sail, none of them look back. And I always noticed it, but just thought that was good acting or whatever that was. But when he took his sons, who were early teenagers, they both were looking back, like watching everybody as they left. And he looked over at his sons and said, "Quit looking back, because that's not where we're headed." And I think I texted Harold and I was like, this is gonna fit in a sermon somewhere, I can promise that. But it's such sound advice. Quit looking back. That's not where you're headed. I know you made a mistake. Move on. Don't let that mistake define you. I know that person hurt you. Forgive them. Move on. Quit letting that one instance that happened years ago still dictate your next steps. Not everyone is like that person. Not everyone is going to hurt you like that person. Keep taking steps forward. Keep moving on. Don't look back. That's not where you're headed. So as I close, the Bible is full of pictures of believers that are martyred. From Stephen to James to John the Baptist, Andrew, Peter, Paul. Looking at Revelation chapter 2 and 3, it talks about the victorious Christians. Especially chapter 3, verse 21, it says, "To him who overcomes, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne." Martyrdom to me is such an amazing place of faith. I mean, it truly is. Such an amazing place of faith. We should be living our lives in that place of faith, knowing that chances are you're not going to face that. But are you willing to give up that experience? Are you willing to give up hanging out with those people? Are you willing to give up things because you know that it doesn't, not doing what they're doing because you know that it doesn't line up with your convictions? And then how do you live out those convictions, but still do it in a place of love? You don't have to do what they're doing, but don't judge them either. Judge and be judged. So you should choose to not do that, because we all have a past. We all have things that we've done, but quit looking back and move forward. Let's pray.